Um, Obviously, we'll cut and edit necessary parts, but I just wanted you to be aware of that. Let me just double check.
Okay, and we're just printing out one thing right now. It will probably be about 30 more seconds.
Okay.
I just don't want you to have no, it still needs to probably do the other side. Yeah, it's doing the other side. Just didn't want to mess up your recording.
Oh, no. We're good.
Oh, it's okay. That's right. I think it's. That's okay. All right.
Oh.
No, don't worry. It'll be fine. Okay, we're good.
All right, good. So we'll let people know that there's a seat waiting for you when you're ready.
Right. That's what, that's what I was thinking.
So we'll go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about me. We talked earlier. So a little bit about me. My name is Andre Koen, and I am the program director here at the Mayo Clinic in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And so one of the things and one of the reasons I contacted you was because we're experiencing, and probably more like most of the country, experiencing conflict in some pretty extreme ways. And so folks are looking for ways to deal with that conflict, mitigate that conflict, navigate through that conflict. And it's not just political, but it's conflicts of ideas, conflict of methods, and all these things. And so in doing my research, I ran across one of your books, and I thought it was absolutely profound. And it's the book, Adversaries to Allies, When People Without Manipulation or Coercion. And when I saw that, I was like, yes. So here's somebody with some answers to some real problems. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the book.
Okay, and we actually now have that book. It came out in paperback. I'm going to show it to you. I didn't know which edition you had. So it's now a paperback book. Yay. But that came out a couple of years ago or so in paperback. Adversaries into Allies is actually, of all the books I've written or co-written, that's kind of the book that I sort of felt I was put on earth to write. And so I'm so deeply honored to know that you enjoyed it, that you thought it was a good book and worthwhile of, utilizing. So thank you.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you, Bob. I mean, so what brought you to, and you're not just the author of this book. Like, as you mentioned, you've co-authored a number of books as well. And
yeah.
And so tell me about your niche, your vein.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started out as a broadcaster. First, I was in radio and then television in a very, very small market. I was with an ABC affiliate, small market, and which was good because I got to learn. You didn't get paid a whole lot, but you learned everything about the the field, which helped me as a guest after I had books out. But I really kind of graduated into sales, right, and started studying sales and personal development, and did well in sales, and eventually started teaching other people what was working for me. So my first big book was called Endless Referrals, which was basically a book on business networking. But the series that really started it for me, that kind of took it to a new level, was a book called The Go-Giver, which is a business parable that I co-authored with John David Mann. Since we now have 4 books on the series, 3 of them are parables. And that's been, that one has sold, I think, 850,000 copies, approaching 900,000. And altogether, the books have sold well over 1 million. So that's been our biggest one. And the last one, The Go-Giver Influencer, is really the parable of that book that you have there. It's the parable of the adversaries into allies, which is the how-to aspect. So, okay. Yeah, really my big thing is trying to bring to the world a way of communicating with one another that we can actually communicate and actually be effective and be influential and be persuasive, and always, be able to deal with or work with others in a way in which everyone comes out ahead, but also everyone feels good about themselves, and they feel good about the situation, and they feel good about the other person. Because what's happening now is really, just the opposite of that, where it used to be I'm right, you're wrong. Now it's I'm right, you're evil. And as counterproductive as it used to be, now it's gotten downright just nasty and mean and totally, counterproductive.
So you do give some solutions to that in the book, and I appreciate that. But what do you think has driven us to this point where differences are not a point of they're a point of contention, but not a point of collaboration, right? So I can remember in my younger days, if I disagreed with someone, that was actually a person that I wanted to get to know more about, right? So now we seem to be in this. Well, that's the opposite. I only want to be surrounded by things or with people who agree with how I see the world, and that. What do you think has led us to this particular point?
Yeah, and that is a great point that you made. What has led us? Well, I think what has facilitated that happening is social media and the internet, and I'm not blaming it on that, okay? But I'm just saying that's helped this along. Why? Because now everyone has access to share their opinions, okay? And so the good news is, everyone can share their opinions. The bad news is everyone is sharing their opinions. And their opinions, they're not necessarily facts. But what happens is when you believe something, because we all come from our own individual belief systems, our ways of seeing the world. And it's now easier to kind of join groups or kind of see where this entire group of people kind of comes at it the way you do. And it's easy now to find an echo chamber, right? Yeah. To be a part of, to what have you. And so I think it's taken it. So now the numbers have just gotten so big. It used to be, you had an opinion, had thoughts, but other people had different thoughts and so forth. Well, that's still the same, but now it's easier to kind of put those other thoughts out and just go to the ones that make you feel good. Yeah. It's the same with, remember there used to be, basically 3 networks, right? And then the public channel. And then, so you basically got your news from one of 4 different places. They all kind of had to present it as objectively as they could. Yeah. But now, you've got so many different outlets, and they're all competing for the same advertising dollars. They need to draw eyeballs. Okay. Now, here's a headline that does not draw eyeballs. Corporate CEO treats people well and fairly. Okay,
you're right.
Doesn't draw. Right. So instead, they are now more, what's the word you call where it's
sensationalized.
Sensational. That was the word. Sensationalized. Everything now is sensational, right? Everything is and it's, so that's what we've got. So now it's easier to find that, if you're this, well, here are the networks to watch that echo your views, and you can feel really good and see the news as you want to see it, right? But right. If you feel this way, you can watch this network and see it as you want to see it. And now, and as that's happened, I think there's been a cause and effect and a cause and effect, and it's gone circular. So it's now just kept building this, I'm on my team, you're on your team. My team's made up of good people with good intent. Your team is made up of bad people with bad intent. It's not just that I disagree with your idea. I disagree with you as a person. Yeah. I think you're a bad person for even having those ideas. And the people whose opinions I respect, they say that. So I know it's true. So I think all this together. So you look at social media, you look at the traditional media, and I think it all, it all has created the context for that to happen. It's still not the fault of that, human beings and human nature being what it is. Hey, we need to take responsibility for ourselves to communicate the correct way. But I think the modern day technology has created the context where that negativity can really go to a different level.
Yeah, I remember growing up at a time when Walter Cronkite, and I'm dating myself, but he was the news. Like if he said it, that's how it was. And then, you could debate how you felt about it, but he told the truth, right? So,
Yeah.
I think to your point, yeah.
And here's an interesting thing about that, because you bring up a very great point. Walter Cronkite, you really didn't know if he was left or right. It came out after he died, or maybe near the end of his life. He was actually very far to the left politically. But it's such a tribute to him that none of us even knew that.
Mm-mm.
We just knew if Walter Cronkite said it, it was objective, that he said it because it's the news. He was reporting the news. He wasn't being the news, and he wasn't trying to frame the news.
Yep.
You didn't know what he was.
Yeah. No, you didn't.
Yeah. Nowadays, can you really say that about, most of the, the reporters or the anchors?
Yeah, you can't say, yeah. So I like how, so when I was reading the book, I liked how you gave some very pointed ways to kind of get out of these echo chambers, right? So, and actually be critical about oneself, but also be compassionate to the other point of view, right? Which you so eloquently kind of pointed out how we've gotten to that point. So, and I have to pick up your other books because I didn't recognize that this was kind of the how-to manual into those other things. But I'm kind of a pragmatist, so I want to get like straight to just tell me what to do. So I can the problem. So I found this to be very helpful.
Thank you.
So I wrote down some notes and just had some questions to kind of ask you about. So there are basically 5 principles that you present in the book.
Mm-hmm.
One is controlling your emotions, understanding the clash of belief systems, acknowledging the other's ego, setting the proper frame, and communicating with tact and empathy. So what led you to come up with those 5 things? If you can talk a little bit about those 5 principles, that'll be wonderful.
Well, I truly believe, and please pardon me for bragging here, but I had and still have great parents who I got to see just treat people well and treat people with kindness. And my dad, who, he and I are so much alike, in which he was very much in the public eye in his, in the Massachusetts area where we grew up through his work. And I, just as an author and speaker, I tend to be in the public eye. So I got to kind of see how my dad just treated people and how loved he was, and how really he was always so interested in the other person, genuinely interested. I mean, I think with him it was natural. I think with me I had to work at it. I'm glad I had a great model in him to be able to, right? But I always say the single greatest people skill is a highly developed and authentic interest in the other person. And it was always so interesting to me how he would ask questions of pretty much anyone he met, and got to know about them and encourage them. He always, as I say, this is my words, he made people feel genuinely good about themselves.
Mm.
And, when we can do that, that's when people respond to us in a positive way. I always say, throughout all of my books, whether they're business books, whether sales, marketing, people skills, what have you, I have a saying that is, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to, and we can say, allow themselves to be influenced or led by those people they know, like, and trust. And, there's simply no faster, more powerful, more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you in others than by genuinely and authentically moving from what we call an I focus or me focus to an other focus. In a sense, looking to make your win all about the other person's win. So, that's really where it begins. It's through that focus on bringing value to others. And, it begins with controlling your emotions. the sages said, who is a mighty person? And they said, that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy or of a potential enemy a friend. Really, that's where it begins, because you think about it, it's only when we're in control of ourselves and control of our emotions that we're even in a position to take a potentially negative situation or negative person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. Yet how often, and we know this, yet how often do we allow someone, based on what they say or what they do or a situation, we allow that to push our emotional hot buttons, and we make ourselves frustrated or helpless feeling or angry, and we say or do that very thing that we know is counterproductive to what we're, and the question is, well, why do we, if we know better, why do we do that? And the answer is because we're human beings. And as human beings, we're emotional creatures, right? I mean, we like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent we are, but we're pretty emotionally driven. We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those emotional decisions with logic. So we rationalize, which really I think means we tell ourselves rational lies, right? And yeah, we do that to justify that. And so we're not saying, by the way, and I think this is important, we're not saying to deny your emotions or forego your emotions. Of course not. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. No, we're saying just make sure that you're the master of your emotions, as opposed to your emotions being the master of you. Or as one of my great mentors and friends, Dondi Scumaci, puts it, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So controlling your emotions. So understanding the clash of beliefs. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think this is, so important to understand, because, what is a belief? Well, a belief is basically a subjective truth. In other words, it's the truth as you understand the truth to be, or as I understand the truth to be, which means it may be the truth, or it might just be our truth, right? And we don't even know this now, because it's a part of our belief system. Our belief system is kind of a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, everything we touch, taste, hear, every experience we have. But it tends to be pretty much etched in stone by the time we're a little more than toddlers, right? So most of us, we grow up subject to what I call an unconscious operating system. And we think we're making these conscious choices, yet they're really kind of within the premise of our already held beliefs, which we had nothing to do with forming. They were pretty much given to us. But as human beings, and by the way, that person with whom we're about to have a interpersonal conversation or conflict, well, they're subject to their own belief systems, their unconscious operating system. But we tend as human beings to think that everyone else pretty much sees the world the same way we do. How else could it be any different, right? It's all we know. And they don't. And so practically every conflict is the result of two people seeing the same basic thing from totally different viewpoints and not even realizing it. By the way, the fact that we think others see the world the same way we do, that's why you often hear people say things like, oh, everybody likes that, or nobody would want that. Or I don't know if you've ever heard someone say, or maybe said it, I know I have far too often, oh, I'd never treat someone like that, or I'd never speak to someone that, well, no, we wouldn't, because it's not congruent with our belief system, but it is for them. And so when we say understand the clash of belief systems, it's not that you have to understand what their belief system is. You can't. They don't even understand what their belief system is. It's probably unconscious. No, you just need to understand that the two of you come from two different belief systems. And when you do that, now you can respectfully work within that situation in order to come to a proper working conclusion, what we say is step into the other person's shoes, right? And that's an old saying. We hear it all the time. Maybe not so easy when you think about the fact that most people have different size feet, right? So we literally can't step into their shoes. We figuratively can't step into their mind or their beliefs. So how do we do this? Well, two things. One is ask questions, right? And only by asking questions are we in a position to get to understand what that person. But what we need to do is, after we ask the question, we need to listen. And that's the part of it that can be really, really tough, because most people, what they do, and I think we've all probably done this, we listen with our ears, but that's just the surface listening. That's listening while you're waiting your turn to speak, maybe even forming your own thoughts of what you're going to say to be right and to outright, or it's, letting them get in their 2 cents so that we can then get in our 10 cents. So that's the surface listening. Instead, what we want to do is listen with our eyes, listen with our posture, even listen with the back of our neck. In other words, really put our whole being into listening to this person. And when you do, 2 things happen, 2 wonderful things. One is you do know more. You have stepped into their shoes. You've stepped into their world. You've found out some of the things that are driving them. What is it they believe? What do they need? What do they want? What do they desire? What problems are they having that you can help solve, or whatever it happens to be? So you have more knowledge. But secondly, the other person feels heard. They feel listened to. And it's just one of the human needs we have to feel understood by others. And so when you listen like this, and this other person feels listened to, it tends to elicit trust, right? It tends to help them to be less resistant to you and actually more accepting of your ideas.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with someone who has a very thick accent. And it wasn't so much a complaint as much as it was a comment that oftentimes people don't listen to what they have to say because they have a thick accent. And they act as if this person doesn't know they have a thick accent. And so, in speaking with them, they were saying it's very, they feel very good when people ask them to repeat something, because it shows that not only were they listening, right, but they actually care about what they care.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yes.
So oftentimes we act like people don't know that they have, right, these communication difficulties, or that they have some kind of difference, and we try to ignore that difference, when in fact it's the acknowledgement of that difference within the context of the conversation that actually propels us to be able to have good relationships. So
I love that. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So I want to, so we can talk about acknowledging the ego. I think that idea of saving face is an important thing, and allowing people to have kind of this back door so that we don't paint them into a corner. Setting the proper frame. So knowing that certain kinds of conversations can only happen or should happen within a particular kind of context, and that kind of stuff is important. But there was one concept, and the last one was talking about communicating with tact and with empathy, which leads me back to can you tell me about I'm going to make sure I'm saying this right, the Ransberger pivot?
Oh, yes. Well, this is something that was developed by 2 people, Ray Ransberger and Marshall Fritz. And it was a way of, when you have a political disagreement with someone, finding an area where first you both agree. So you take it from being 2 real adversaries who absolutely cannot understand why the other person could possibly be thinking the way they do, to starting with that place from which you both agree on the outcome, and then going from there. So let's take a situation, let's say on Facebook, okay? Probably never seen this one before, but somebody makes a political statement and someone comments, "People like you are the worst excuses for human beings."
Never seen that.
Notice when someone receives a comment like that, okay, they never tend to write back, "Oh, thank you so much for pointing out the error of my ways. I hadn't thought about it like that before, but now that you put it that way, I renounce everything I've believed for the past 25 years. Of course not. It's only going to make a person feel even more determined to, right? So what they came up with was the Ransberger pivot, and I actually added a little bit to it at the beginning, but it would go like this. Let's say, again, somebody posts something political, the person writes back, and a person by the name of Dave writes back, "People like you are the worst people, human beings. You don't care about people. You want to see people out in the street," whatever. Okay, so let's say now the other person is going to write back, and they're going to write to Dave. And here's the part that I kind of put in, because this is the kind of the setting it up with tact first. And that is to say, Dave, I must say, I'm very impressed with the passion you have for this topic. It's obvious you truly care about others. Okay, now here the Ransberger pivot comes where you use the words "like you, I want to." And here it is. Like you, I want to live in a country where people are able to, and now you'd fill in the blank with what both of you actually want. Because you know what? Most people on the political left and the political right, and I'm not talking about the outliers who are way out, I'm talking about most people, they want the same basic thing. We want people to be able to pursue happiness how they see fit, as long as they don't harm other people. We want people to be prosperous. We want people to be happy. We want, right? Most people want that. They just have different ways of going about it. So it would be, and then we'll end, I'll put the end of the Ransberger pivot on this. So it would be starting out, Dave, I must say I'm very impressed with your passion for this topic. You obviously really care about others. Like you, I want to live in a country where people are able to, and then you fill in that, and then you end with, I think our only disagreement is on what the best way to get there would be. So now you've reframed this from two total adversaries to two people who actually agree on a basic point, and they want, and then it's just a matter of the way. So no one's evil. We just have two different ways of getting. Now, let me take this a step further. Someone might say, okay, and by the way, I've had these discussions, and I've had actually people apologize and say, "You're right, I didn't mean to, blah, blah, blah." And I've taught this to others but often that doesn't happen, because you've got the person who would insult someone like that often is sort of so far gone that they really are not looking to. But here's the thing. Remember that in every one of these conversations, and we're saying political, but it could be any conversation really, whether it's in person, at a party, in a group, at the Thanksgiving dinner table, or online, there are typically, aside from the two people engaging in the debate, if you will, there are usually lots of other people who are listening in, not saying anything. And those people are listening for two things. And first of all, most people are not really that far to the left or that far to the right. Most people are actually pretty much in the center, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, but can be influenced, and they're open, okay? But here's what they're looking for. They're looking for, who has the facts, who has the best argument, but they're even more importantly, they're looking for which one of these people presents themselves in a way that is more relatable, that's kinder, that really seems to be the type of person who, if I had a question, I could ask them and they wouldn't bite my head off for not already know it. You know what I'm saying? And so they're much more likely to kind of move to your side of the issue because you're a nicer person. You're a kinder person. You're presenting yourself in such a way that you're obviously benevolent and giving other people the benefit of the doubt for what they think, as opposed to they're evil because they don't agree with me.
This is so, and it's so funny that the tools that you're giving, again, goes back to kind of your parents, but also, my parents said very much the same thing and demonstrated those things. And you also said something in this last piece that I thought was really, really interesting, was that people have to want to. Right, so the person that doesn't want to won't or can't make all of these things, and so I think that So a question for each of us, I think, is, do we want to, and why do we, and why don't we necessarily want to turn adversaries into allies without coercion?
That's the thing. When people say, well, how can you get people to, to start applying these? Well, the first thing is they need to first believe that maybe there's a better way of doing things than what they've been doing, right? Because if someone is a real just kind of nasty and argumentative and, my mind's made up, don't confuse me with the facts type of person, if that's just how they are, well, how's that? It's the old Dr. Phil question, right? How's that working for them? And, but if they think it's working for them, fine. Why would they change? We don't change when we don't feel we have any reason to. So it's really first someone saying, hey, the way I'm doing it, I don't have the kind of influence that I'd really like. I don't have the type of maybe abilities to persuade people to my point of view. I find myself just in arguments a lot that really don't feel good. They're not making friends of people. They're just driving people away from me. Maybe there's a better way to do it, and then they're open. Then they're ready for ways to, turn that around and turn that into a positive.
Cool. No, so you know what? I'm really going to encourage people to buy the book. I was going to ask you a bunch of other questions, but I think that I don't want you to have to reiterate the book.
Whatever you want. That's fine. I'm enjoying this immensely.
Oh, wonderful. So I have about 4 other concepts that I wanted you to kind of walk us through, and because one that I thought was really interesting was this idea of be a judge and not a lawyer, right? So what's the judge not? Yes, so what's the difference between those two concepts?
Yeah, this was actually from the Talmud, where they're talking about the difference in being involved in a discussion, or you could say a debate, and they say be a judge, not a lawyer, and that is a lawyer is there for the purpose of arguing a certain point for their side. That is what they're paid to do. That's their responsibility, within the law, of course, and within ethically, of course, but their job is to make the case for their client. Whereas the judge is there to look at things objectively, weigh things, right? And to be able to then come to a decision. And unless we're actually a lawyer arguing a case, we should be a judge, because only then are we able to see the situation as opposed to just hearing one side of the issue. When it comes to decision making, we need to have the facts in front of us. We need to have both sides of the issue, but not only both sides, but all sides, because it's not usually, sometimes they say, well, there are 3 sides to every argument, one side, this side, and somewhere in the middle. But sometimes it's not even in the middle. Sometimes it's way outside those points. So we need to list it as objectively as we can. That's what a judge does, as opposed to a lawyer.
Wonderful. Let's see. Oh, you talk about non-serving beliefs, right? So how can a belief be non-serving, or what's a way to think about that?
Yeah. When we talk about beliefs, again, it's understanding that most of these were given to us. We did not consciously accept these beliefs as truths. We just accepted them as truths because we were too young to know any different, right? So again, whether it's environment, parents, teachers, the kid, at a very young age. And so let's say someone grows up, someone grows up hearing that, people with money are nasty people. They got there by taking advantage of others, or by doing it on the backs of others, or by being crooked, right? And someone grows up with that. That's a non-serving belief, because really, when you think about it, especially the more free market a community is, a society is. When I say free market, I simply mean no one's forced to do business with anyone else. Right. The only way someone will do business with someone is when they feel it will. They'll be better off by doing so, which means the entrepreneur, the salesperson, the business person that needs to provide, they need to focus on providing exceptional value to others. And what we would even say is money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which really means that the value must be the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is a very natural result of the value you've provided. However, what if someone grows up with a belief that money is bad, rich people are bad, they get, wow, you can be providing exceptional value to many, many people. But when it comes time to be able to receive that money, if unconsciously your belief system says money is bad, people with money are bad, wealthy people are bad, I don't want to be bad, so what do? We sabotage. Yeah. Same with relationships. You look at relationships where someone grows up as the product of a very
turbulent, very
turbulent relationship, marriage, where to them parents argue with each other. They're more enemies than they are friends. They're more, right? Well, this person grows up. It's not that they consciously seek out a partner like that, but in their way of seeing the world and their belief system, their subjective truth, that's what a relationship is. And that's why, they tend to, if they're having a good relationship, they sabotage that and they find someone who doesn't. Again, those are just beliefs that don't serve us. And so what I talk about is we need to move from that unconscious belief system, that unconscious operating system, right, that we talked about earlier, and go into consciousness, live in consciousness, check our premises, always ask ourselves, why do I feel this way? Why do I believe this? Who did I learn it from? How do they know this? Is this definitely fact? Who told them it was right? And so the more we can drill down and really live in a mode of conscious awareness, that's the degree we can rid ourselves of those non-serving beliefs and take on beliefs that serve us and, of course, serve the world around us.
Yeah. Tucked in that concept, as you were talking about, I was thinking, is also having some goals for myself, right? So if I have goals and those beliefs aren't serving those goals, then in fact, those will be non-serving.
Oh,
but again, to your previous point, if they are serving me, then I'm not going to change and I won't see a need for change because they're serving me, right? So,
sometimes we think they're serving when they're not, because our view of the world says this is just the way it is. So that's why, again, we have to go, and we all do this. I mean, I do this, and it's something we constantly have to work on. It's a work in progress, but that's life, and that is human nature.
Yeah. No, I feel like we are, we're brothers in terms of how we see the world, because when we talk about diversity and inclusion, all the tools that you're giving us are the things we want people to be mindful of, right? In the hiring process, in the advancement of people in their workplaces, as a manager, a supervisor, to be really critical. Am I operating with these belief systems that may not necessarily be serving, because the world is changing. The context is changing.
Yeah.
So as an effective leader, I have to adapt to those contexts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just a couple of other things that I wanted to hit on. One was speak good and how to influence or build a team. Can you speak to this idea of speaking good?
Well, it's funny, and we all know the power of the tongue, right? It can build or it can destroy. Gossip is, which, to me, I define gossip as the unnecessary sharing of any harmful or hurtful information. Okay. So with that definition, there can be no good gossip, right? So, well, what about good gossip? Well, if it's the unnecessary sharing of harmful or hurtful information, there can't be good gossip. There can be information exchanges, there can be good news, but no, gossip by its very nature is a negative. Okay. If you go with that definition. Now, the unnecessary sharing. Now, is it ever necessary to share something that's harmful or hurtful? Well, there's times if someone's stealing from the company, you've got to be able to let the appropriate person know. Now, even then, you need to do it in a way that you're not saying anything more than you have to. You're not saying, oh, and by the way, that person has bad breath. It would just be, that I have reason to believe that this X and that, and do. But when we reverse that, And we always look for ways to speak good of people. And again, that's something I learned from my dad, and I'm forever grateful that he always found something good to say about someone. And what he did, and I wrote an article about this once that's been all over the world, and just because people have picked up on it and shared it. And it's how he, when someone could try to speak ill of someone, he wouldn't acknowledge that, but instead he would find what the good was in that other person and get the other person to agree with that and see the good. And what my dad would do is he would only spread things to others when good was spoken about them. And so he always created goodwill among people. And that's something I've just always tried to do. And I don't think I've ever done it as wonderfully as my dad has, but it's something I've always tried to do. And that when I hear someone good saying something about someone, so when I hear someone saying something good about someone else, I make sure that other person knows that. And these two people end up being even better, closer friends maybe, or, what have you. But so if we're gonna repeat anything, repeat the good. Now, and again, I'm not being Pollyanna. There's times we have to critique someone, or we have to constructively criticize. I mean, we're talking about the real world, but that's where tact comes in. And my dad, and again, I don't mean to be bragging about my dad, and I know you have great parents as well, and so it's but my dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. And I've always enjoyed that, because to me, it takes strength to not just, fire back at someone who says something that you don't agree with, or to send that email reply or to, speak to someone in a way that you're going to regret later on because it wasn't the best choice of words. I think tact is really being able to communicate information to someone that they may not ordinarily enjoy hearing or welcome, but doing it in such a way that not only are they not defensive toward you or resistant to your idea, but they're open to you and they're more accepting of your idea because of the way it was expressed to them.
So I know, so you've mentioned your dad a couple of times, and this actually isn't in my notes, but just in talking with you, where did your dad get this level of self-actualization, this level of the importance of interpersonal relationships? What do you think, were there events in his life that kind of thrust him to have these realizations? Or was this kind of an accumulation over a lifetime of experiences that he was able to say this? So I guess my core question is, was there a single event, or was this over a lifetime that he was able to kind of come to these things that you gleaned from?
I think in my dad's case, it really was a gift. It really was, because typically this kind of thing that I talk about, people skills, if you will, which is a very important part of success, is typically learned. Okay. And most people don't have that natural kind, but he just had a gift of this. He grew up very, very poor. It was Americana, the immigrant slums, the in the middle of the Depression, and the growing up in the middle of the Depression, leaving home to fight in World War II, and that whole greatest generation type of thing. But really in the so he had nothing, but he just kind of made his way, and with my mom, the two of them built a nice business, and I don't know, with him, I really think it was just a gift. And he was very self-educated. Growing up, he was always reading all the time. And but yeah, I think he just had a gift that most people don't have. Again, let's say it wasn't a gift for me. I had to learn it, but I was very lucky that I got to observe on a constant basis.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you for being so vulnerable with us. I want to thank you for sharing a lot of your dad's knowledge through the writing of this book. And again, I'm going to encourage people to go after this. There are really great tools that you've put in here. And I hope at some point we, particularly if you come to the cities, I'd love to at least grab coffee, buy you dinner or something, because I think we're kinsmen in this work, that
Absolutely.
we need to build more relationships, and that the only enemies that we have are the ones we haven't met yet, right? So
yeah, and and we were both lucky to have parents that set great examples.
Yep.
And I think that it really is so important, because we know that the children, they look at what you're doing, right? And so I think that's just it's so very important. And and I'm going to be up there in January when it's very cold. So as long as the coffee is hot, wow, because I know the conversation will be great.
Well, great. Well, and I do want to, I will say this though, that my parents did something that I think many parents sometimes are afraid to do. And they knew that they could only take me so far, that with the gifts and talents that they had, they could only lead me so far. And so they placed me in the hands of people who could take me further than than the distance they could run, so to speak. And so I think that
says a lot about them.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully, as people are listening to this podcast or watching this video, that they recognize that you don't have to, you may not be as fortunate as we have been in terms of having parents who could impart those things. Or however, the things you were taught are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. And so how do you take responsibility for your own life? Because it is yours. This is Andre Koen. I want to say thank you so much to Bob for joining us today. And this is Mayo Clinic. Sorry. This is Andre Koen at Mayo Clinic, and we are speaking of diversity and inclusion. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye. Great. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, my pleasure.
This
was wonderful.
Yeah, this rock, man. This rock. So I'll give you an uncut and the final edited version for you to use as well. And yeah, so so we'll just give folks your the URL to go buy the book off the website or whatever. Is that your preference or?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it could either be thegogiver.com or burg.com, either one.
Okay, cool. One thing we didn't kind of talk about, and I'm curious because I kept seeing this on your website, was the curriculum that you're using with schools. Is that the Go Giver stuff?
Yeah, we did that for basically high school students, although we know there's been some older and some younger that have been using it. But we teamed up with a professional educator from Wheeler High School who did a great job. He started teaching it from the moment the book came out. He was teaching it to his seniors, and he connected with John and me and said, that he'd like to eventually build an actual, formal curriculum around it. And, we got to know him, and he really just embodied the principles themselves of the book. And eventually, he put that together, and now there's a bunch of teachers using it, and which we're really excited about.
Sweet. So I just want to put this out here. If you're ever interested in delving into the diversity space, and I'm not talking about a leftist thing, and I'm not talking about a right thing, but I'm talking about using those same concepts, but with diversity as some of the metaphors or conversations, I would love the opportunity to build something with you if you ever get inclined to do so.
Okay. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, any other questions or comments for me or?
No, you do a great job hosting. That is wonderful. That was a lot of fun. You made it very easy. You set me up perfectly for those.
Yeah, well, the book outline helps a lot. So I know I need to keep people on their points. So.
That's right.
And Charlie Rose, he left a hole, so somebody's got to fill that.
Yeah, and it might as well be you. I like that.
Well, right. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Bob, and I will. I'll talk to you soon. And again, keep in touch. You'll probably hear some things from my assistant. who set these things up, and so I guess my people will talk to your people.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
All right, good. Well, have a good day, man. Thank you so much.
All right, Andre. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.